This week's US CQM Forecast Alert is: how much was S&P 500 overvalued in 2024 Q1? The retail sales and industrial production index for March exceeded their annual forecast, respectively, and economic growth rate on both the income side and the PCA were revised upward. On the expenditure side, the economic growth rate has been revised downward a bit due to a significant drop in housing starts. This week will be the final forecast for 2024 Q1 GDP. The economy began to slow down in mid-January and is expected to bottom out in the second half of March, with the economic growth rate expected to be around 1%. Compared to real GDP, real aggregated indexes are forecasted to grow by more than 2%, excluding real final sales. The real economy is better than GDP indicates. Looking at the growth rate of GDP, final sales, and domestic final sales, we can see the biggest uncertainty in the advanced figure for 2024 Q1 GDP lies in export and import in March. In 2024 Q1, the economic growth rate predicted by PCA was unusually much higher than the economic growth rate predicted by CQM. PCA forecasting uses all monthly economic indicators such as the production side and the financial side, including stock prices and money supply, in addition to monthly economic indicators on the expenditure and income side. As a result, the economic growth rate predicted by the PCA tend to fall between the economic growth rate of both the expenditure and income side forecasted by the CQM. When the PCA forecast significantly exceeds them, there is a possibility that the stock price is in a bubble. This table shows changes in the economic growth rate forecasted by PCA when assuming the growth rate of stock prices from January to March are 0%, -1%, and -2% respectively. If the S&P 500 is the actual value, the economic growth rate was 4.32%. However, when assuming a 0% growth rate for the S&P 500 as seen in SIM0, an economic growth rate of 2.01% was forecasted. The economic growth rate for SIM1 and SIM2 was 1.32% and 0.62% respectively. If the economic growth rate in 2024 Q1 did not exceed 2%, there is a possibility that the stock prices will be corrected to be negative growth in 2024 Q2. Conclusions from this week's US CQM Forecast Alert. The first, advanced 2024 Q1 GDP growth rate is forecasted to be approximately 1%. The second, the biggest uncertainty for the advanced 2024 Q1 GDP is export and import in March. The third, There was a bubble tendency in stock prices in 2024 Q1. The fourth, if the economic growth rate 2024 Q1 doesn't exceed 2%, there is a high possibility that the stock prices will be corrected to be negative growth in 2024 Q2. This slide contains additional information about this week's detailed CQM forecast and shows how to access the past US CQM Forecast Alert.